I want you to remember the last photo you deleted. Not the one you trashed without thinking, but the one where your thumb hovered for just a fraction of a second longer. That tiny hesitation held a whole hidden weather system. You tapped, the image collapsed into a little animation and was gone. And for a moment, barely long enough to name, something in your chest pulled taut and then snapped. Not regret exactly, something quieter, something that felt almost like grief. You probably told yourself it was nothing, a bad angle, a duplicate, a screenshot from a conversation you no longer care about, but you kept that image for months, maybe years, without ever opening it. It sat there in the endless scroll, invisible and weightless, doing a job you never consciously assigned it. That photo was a custodian, a tiny guardian of a fragment of your life that your brain decided it could not be trusted to hold alone. When you fired the custodian, the archive of you grew a little more fragile. The memory did not vanish, but its footing became less certain. You feel that. We all do. Here is the first quiet twist. You were not mourning the picture itself, you were mourning the person who once decided that picture mattered enough to keep. Think of that photograph you took through a smeared train window, a mediocre sunset bleeding into an industrial skyline. It wasn't beautiful, but you were alone, traveling towards something that felt consequential at the time. Now you cannot recall the destination or why it stirred you. The photo was the last bridge. Deleting it meant admitting that the version of you on that train, full of forward motion and unnameable hope, no longer exists. You did not hold a funeral, you just deleted. And that miniature death of a self you used to be left a ghost in the room. This is not metaphor run wild. Psychologists speak of the extended self, the idea that our possessions weave themselves into our identity so tightly that losing them feels like losing a limb. A digital photo is not just a possession, it is a mirror that reflects not your face, but your way of seeing. Deleting one does not feel like tossing a ticket stub. It feels like removing a mirror and realizing you can no longer check if you are still the same person you were yesterday. Take the photo of your ex that you erased after a sleepless night. You did not just remove a face, you removed a witness. That image held indisputable proof that you were once loved in a specific, irreplaceable way. Without it, your memory has to work overtime to convince itself that chapter was real. And neuroscience is blunt about this. Memory is not a playback. It is a storyteller that revises the tale each time you recall it. The photograph was a fixed landmark in a landscape of self-narration. Delete it, and the story drifts. You have not just cleaned up your camera roll. You have set your own history adrift without an anchor. And then there's the blurry photo of a parent, the last one taken before illness softened their voice. You never open it because it would break you on an ordinary Tuesday, but simply knowing it lives inside that little folder labeled Favorites is a form of companionship. It's a silent promise that you can visit that version of them the moment you're brave enough. Deleting it would feel like slamming a door on the very possibility of feeling their presence again, so you keep it. That keeping is a quiet, desperate negotiation with loss itself. The grief is already there, folded inside the file. Deletion would just give it a date of death. At this point, you might think the hidden sorrow is all about cherishing memories, but there's a sharper edge. Sometimes you delete out of shame. That selfie you snapped when you felt invincible, then later despised because you no longer recognize that confidence. Tap, gone. You are punishing a past self for its naivety, performing a tiny surgery on your autobiography to cut out an embarrassing chapter. The act carries a sliver of self-inflicted violence, but the cost is a fragmented timeline, a curated lie that steadily erodes your ability to accept the messy wholeness of your own becoming. The grief you feel is your deeper self mourning the honest witness you just silenced. Now zoom out. We hoard digital photographs in numbers our grandparents could not fathom. Thousands, tens of thousands of almost identical sunsets, coffee cups, restaurant tables, half smiles. They weigh nothing, and yet they weigh on us with the sheer mass of unlived recollection. Deleting a few dozen feels like virtuous weeding, but here's a truth we rarely face. Every image you uproot is a potential anchor for a future self you have not yet met. That blurry shot of a rainy window and half-read novel says nothing now. In 15 years, it could be the only surviving evidence of a quiet peace you once took for granted. We delete based on present emotional accounting, blind to the needs of the person we are becoming. The grief is the whisper of that future self, disappointed before it even arrives. The tech companies understand this better than we do. They engineered the delete action to be frictionless because they want us to make room for more images, more data, more life converted into zeros and ones. Yet they also keep a ghost of everything on a server somewhere, a shadow archive that never truly dies. So the picture is gone from your site, but lingers in a data center in Oregon, a soul without a body. That in-betweenness breeds strange new grief. Grief for something not quite dead and not quite alive. A pixel purgatory that our psychology has no ritual to address.
Anthropologically, this unease is ancient. Many cultures held that an image carried a piece of the soul. To destroy the image was to injure the person depicted. We tell ourselves we have outgrown such magic, but when a friend deletes the one photo where you looked genuinely at ease, don't you feel a tiny violation? When someone untags you, isn't there a flicker of erasure? That old logic lives on, dressed in pixels. Deleting a photo is a miniature soul harm performed without ceremony, and we carry a thimbleful of grief each time. Behavioral economics gives us another layer. Losses hurt roughly twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. That ratio applies to digital memory too. Every photo you delete evaporates not just the image, but the raw material of future nostalgia. And nostalgia is one of our most powerful psychological resources. It fights loneliness, restores meaning, and stitches a continuous sense of self across time. So when you tap that trash icon, you are trading a few megabytes now for a potential well of resilience later. And the trade happens in a fraction of a second, without warning. The sadness you cannot locate is your psychological immune system registering a resource lost. Scale this insight upward. Consider the silent, collective grief when a hard drive fails or a cloud account is hacked. It is a mass unmarked grave of personal witnesses. We have no cultural rituals for digital mourning. We do not hold wakes for a dead laptop. But inside that inert device were the keepers of 1,000 small loves, 10,000 ordinary moments that were the true stitching of life. Every single deletion you perform is a rehearsal for that larger catastrophe, a slow, steady training in letting pieces of yourself go without ceremony. And yet, there is also relief. We rarely admit this. Deleting a photo that carried guilt or held a memory of someone who caused real harm brings a lifting sensation. The grief is tangled with freedom. That complexity is precisely what makes the feeling so hard to name. You are not simply losing, you are choosing to unburden yourself from a narrative you no longer consent to carry. That choice is a quiet assertion of authorship. Authors make cuts, but the moment you cut, you begin to fill the gap with a story that may be a little less true. The messy apartment photo you erased out of embarrassment, without it, you might slowly reconstruct a memory of a cleaner, more composed life. Deletion enables a gentle self-deception. The grief you feel may be your deepest self mourning the loss of an honest witness. The tension is irresolvable. There is another dimension we hardly ever touch. The algorithms have already scanned that picture. They know the faces, the objects, the location, the inferred mood. The machine has fed on it and built a model of your patterns. When you delete, you erase the image from your own conscious archive, but you cannot erase what the algorithm has already become because of it. The photograph's impact persists inside a synthetic intelligence that now expects certain behaviors from you. In a strange way, the photo is dead, but its ghost shapes the digital environment that surrounds you. That is a haunting our generation is not yet equipped to process. So we arrive at the core. We are what we choose to keep and what we choose to let go. Identity is a tapestry woven from moments preserved and moments deliberately unraveled. Every swipe to delete is a vote for the person you want to be tomorrow. The grief that flickers in your chest is not just the sadness of loss, it is the weight of that vote, the profound responsibility of deciding which fragments of your past get to whisper into your future. No one prepared you for this quiet, repetitive, miniature ethical labor. Maybe that is why your thumb hesitated on that last image, because deep in the old mammalian wiring of your brain, you know, to delete a photo is to kill a small god, a god of a possible memory, of a potential reunion, of a future you that might have needed that exact image on an impossibly dark night many years from now. So the next time you find yourself on the edge of deletion, pause. Hold a tiny funeral, even for just a second. Acknowledge that you're not freeing up space. You are closing a door, and every door closed changes the hallway of who you are.